Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
A blissful week had passed in Elysium, allowing Lux to spend some quality time with his lovers. However, he knew that Valerie, Ali, and Ari couldn't stay for long, and the day of parting had once again arrived. "I love you," Valerie said as she gave Lux a hug. "I'll try to find another opportunity to sneak away from the castle to see you." "I love you too," Lux replied as he reciprocated her hug and patted her head. "I look forward to seeing you again." After their embrace ended, it was now Ali's and Ari's turn to say their goodbyes. The two beautiful handmaidens didn't hold back and kissed Lux's lips, making sure that he wouldn't forget them anytime soon. "Eat on time, sleep on time, and think of me on time, okay?" Ali said when her kiss ended. "I will," Lux replied with a smile. "As for me, you should think of me all the time," Ari said before cupping Lux's face to kiss him. When the kiss ended, the Draco succubus whispered something in Lux's ears. "I liked the bondage play," Ari whispered. "Let's try something different next time." Lux looked at Ari with a devilish smile before lightly slapping the naughty handmaiden's backside. Ari giggled, not minding the slap that Lux gave her. In fact, she even liked it when the half-elf was a bit rough with her. Although it was hidden by the clothes she was wearing, the remnants of their bondage play were still visible on Ari's skin. She didn't plan on removing them anytime soon and decided to let them heal naturally as a reminder of the incredible night that she had with her lover. An hour later, the Dragon Princess of Karshvar Draconis, along with her two handmaidens, entered the portal with Lady Faustina. "It's time for us to return as well," Iris said with regret. "Indeed," Kai nodded. Both of them had to assist the people from Barbados Academy and the Rowan tribe with their planned migration to the Finn Kingdom. Adeline also needed to return to Solais in order to talk to her parents back in the Elven Kingdom. Truth be told, the elves were also doing their best to secure their own territory in Elysium just in case the miasma reached their domain. Although it might take a few years for that to happen, starting early would allow them to find a good place to settle down in the future. The other kingdoms were doing the same. Adeline had already gotten permission from Lux to allow her parents to live in the Finn Kingdom if the worst-case scenario were to happen. Lux also returned to Solais to inform Wildguard's stronghold that they could build their own encampment in his kingdom. Although there had been mishaps in his relationship with the guardian of the stronghold, the fact still remained that they had taken good care of him while he was growing up. Lux didn't mind repaying this favor because, for him, the people in Wildguard's stronghold, with the exception of Nero, were all good people. Days passed. Weeks passed. And before long, a month had passed since Valerie's visit to Lux's guild headquarters. During this time, the two baby slimes that had successfully infiltrated the island nation of Torstein had become very popular with the citizens there. In fact, both of them had become so popular that certain restaurants and taverns now had the flag of the Boom Boom pirate crew fluttering on the roof of their establishments. Of course, they only did this after gaining Aiko's permission. Those who blatantly used her reputation to do misdeeds were given swift and deadly punishments by her crew, who wouldn't tolerate anyone tarnishing their princess reputation. At first, the nobles and the royal family of the Torstein nation didn't pay Aiko too much attention because the baby slime was well-behaved and didn't cause unnecessary trouble. In fact, she was so good that she even actively wiped out bandit groups in the region on a regular basis. Of course, the royal family had no idea about the main reason as to why the Boom Boom pirate crew voluntarily did good deeds, which was to steal the treasures and resources that the bandits had accumulated over the years. After many successful bandit subjugations, Aiko was treated like a hero by the locals of the island nation. The nobles were also happy about this because, without bandits threatening their domain, their people could live in peace and trade would flow ceaselessly. Aiko and Fei loved treasures, but more than anything else, they loved good food. Because of this, restaurants that got Aiko's nod of approval were allowed to raise the Boom Boom pirate crew flag in their establishments. Since Aiko was considered a hero of the masses, the places she visited became very popular, similar to the restaurants that celebrities frequently visited back on Earth. She had also begun trading with the merchants, buying the spices they had for sale in bulk. Of course, the baby slime was buying these spices for her own personal consumption. She had employed the greatest chefs in the Ford Federation to become her personal chefs and accompany her in his journey to conquer, air, explore the different island nations in the seven seas. In the 2 months that Eiko was in the Torstein nation, her fame had reached unprecedented heights. Fanatics emerged and started a religion in her name. Some of these fanatics were skilled artists, like painters and sculptors. They even asked her to pose in her fairy princess form, holding the golden anchor in her hands. Soon, the Boom Boom religion spread like wildfire, similar to a cult. This religion only had one rule, and that was the golden rule. Do unto others what Eiko would do unto you. Altars with her statue were built in almost every village, every town, and every city. Before long, something miraculous happened. Eiko gained the power of faith. As the number of her believers grew, so did her strength. According to Avery, it would only be a matter of days before Eiko broke through and became an Empyrean-ranked fairy princess. When the royal family realized what had happened, it was already too late for them to do anything. A quarter of the Torstein nation was now a part of the Boom Boom religion, and it was only a matter of time before it spread further. Because of this, the king politely invited Eiko to the royal palace in order to discuss this issue. Eiko didn't understand these things, so she decided to let Captain Jack Sparrow and Avery do the talking. In the end, a compromise was made, and the Boom Boom religion was only allowed to have their temples, altars, and shrines in the southern region of the Torstein kingdom. Even with this compromise, the king wasn't able to stop the masses from purchasing the Eiko statues and dolls that were being sold by her believers in every part of the nation. Because of this, Eiko's power of faith continued to accumulate. Avery and Captain Jack Sparrow, who knew that this was a good thing, decided that it was time to spread the Boom Boom religion to other places in the Seven Seas. So, after a month had passed, they left the Torstein nation and headed to their next destination. The power of faith was the power of miracles. Avery believed that the more believers Eiko had, the more powerful she would be in the future. As a peak demigod, Avery could also feel that their peaceful days were numbered. But until the day that the world was drowned in darkness, he would continue to raise Eiko's power of faith, allowing her to play a greater role in the greatest battle that the world would ever see. The black-robed man and Nyarlathotep frowned as they looked at the portal that would lead them to the 13th floor of the abyss. They were currently on the 14th floor, and they had just subjugated the demigod who ruled it. For the past 3 months, they had visited all the levels of the abyss and made those who ruled them kneel one after the other. With every demigod that they defeated, their forces grew stronger until they became an unstoppable force. In the end, those who didn't want to lose their lives could only bow their heads and submit to the black-robed man, who was hellbent on taking over the world where the abyssal creatures resided. Unfortunately, his one-sided conquest ended at the 14th floor. The portal leading to the 13th floor wasn't working, and no matter what they did, it remained firmly closed. Truth be told, the other demigods who got wind of the black-robed man's conquest wanted to destroy the portals that led to their floors. However, this was impossible to do. The portals that led from one abyssal floor to another were nearly indestructible. Even if they were destroyed, they would just spawn again due to the power of the abyss. And Taro knew this as well, so he didn't try destroying the gates and instead sealed them. As the first creature who was spawned alongside the abyss, the golem of destruction possessed some authority over it. Because of this, he was able to seal the portals that led to the 13th floor, preventing anyone from harming the succubus queen, whom he treated as family. Of course, to ensure that his plan was foolproof, he had also sealed the portal that would allow those from the 12th floor to enter the 13th floor. So, although it was impossible to jump from the 14th floor to the 12th floor, the golem of destruction didn't plan to take any chances. Antero was powerful, and with the exception of the outer god who was at the lowest level of the abyss, none of the abyssal nobles could defeat it. But even though he was strong, he had one weakness, and that was Queen Rhiannon. She was the only one whom he treated as a family member, so he was willing to go above and beyond to ensure her safety as well as the new life that was currently inside her womb. Who was the ruler of the next floor? The black-robed man asked the demigod whom he had just subjugated. This demigod went by the name Polo, and he was the ruler of the 14th floor. The ruler of the 13th floor is the succubus queen, Rhiannon, Polo replied. Is she strong? The black-robed man asked. She isn't that strong, but after she subjugated the 12th floor, her strength drastically increased, Polo answered. I believe that, currently, she is nearing the peak of the demigod rank, making her the strongest demigod within the first 20 floors of the abyss. The black-robed man frowned after hearing Polo's explanation. Even though a demigod was strong, they simply didn't have the power to close the portal of the abyss that led to their domain. My lord, I think I have an idea as to why this has happened, a demigod, who looked like a mind flayer, commented. I have heard rumors that the primordial golem of destruction, Antero, has returned to the abyss. He has some kind of relationship with Queen Rhiannon. Perhaps he knows that you are coming and is unable to protect her. Because of this, he decided to close off the portals, preventing anyone from entering the territory of the succubus queen. The black-robed man frowned after hearing this explanation. Of course, he knew who Antero was. There was no one in the abyss who didn't know who the golem of destruction was. He had even fought Antero once, and that battle was still fresh in his memory. The overwhelming strength of the golem of destruction was something he wasn't too keen on facing. Even with the power he had acquired from the Azathoth, he believed that he wouldn't be able to defeat the primordial golem that easily. Is there no other way to go to the 13th floor? The black-robed man asked. Perhaps there is, the demigod who looked like a mind flayer replied. But I am not aware of such methods because we have only relied on the portals to travel through the different levels of the abyss. All the other demigods, who had accompanied the black-robed man, nodded their heads in agreement. Nyarlathotep scoffed at the useless fools, but since it also didn't know any methods to bypass this hurdle, it decided to just keep its silence. Very well, the black-robed man said after pondering for a while. We don't need the 13th floor up to the 1st floor to do what we need to do. Everyone, go back to your respective domains and prepare to invade the worlds of Elysium and Solais. The abyssal demigods nodded their heads and did as they were told. The black-robed man had shown them a power that they were unable to resist. They even felt pity for the two worlds that they were about to invade. There was simply no chance for them to overcome the united invasion of the creatures from the abyss. When the Abyssal War started over 100 years ago, there were dozens of demigods who chose not to participate in the war. These demigods now ruled the floors where the previous lords had died in battle. Unfortunately, this strategy would not work a second time. The black-robed man was dead set on commanding all the demigods of the abyss to participate in the invasion, bringing all of their forces to the two worlds that he wanted to conquer. When everyone had left, Nyarlathotep approached the black-robed man with an amused expression on its alien-looking face. The main reason why the black-robed man was able to subdue the other demigods who had banded together to resist him was due to Nyarlathotep's overwhelming strength. The vile outer god of madness, chaos, and ruin was quite powerful to the point that it had forcefully controlled the subordinates of the demigods who opposed them and made them mad. Once they had become insane, Nyarlathotep manipulated them to betray their lords and massacre their comrades in arms. Because of this, even though many demigods had formed a resistance group against the black-robed man, they all failed in the end and had no other choice than to either submit or perish under the outer god's might. Your true conquest is about to begin, Nyarlathotep said. How do you feel? Feel? The black-robed man asked back. I suppose I will feel satisfied once I conquered Elysium and Solais. But right now, I don't feel anything. Not excitement, not anxiety, nothing. The only thing I feel is strength. Power that would allow me to crush those who oppose me. Frankly, I don't think that there is anyone alive who can stop me. But if there is, I look forward to the challenge. Perhaps I will feel something once again after the many years of solitude here in the abyss. Nyarlathotep chuckled. Then what about the pillars that you spoke of? The pillars that will allow you to ascend to godhood. Doesn't that excite you? The black-robed man paused as if remembering something very nostalgic that happened in the past. Perhaps that will excite me, the black-robed man admitted. I had tried to become a god. Maybe this time, it will become a reality. Nyarlathotep didn't say anything else and only nodded its head. It had already tried to pry the darkest secret out of the black-robed man using its vile powers. But the only thing he was able to grasp was the man's interest in the Pillars of Eternity. Maybe the process of collecting these divine artifacts would elicit some sort of reaction from him. But currently, the only thing that the outer god could feel in the man's heart was a certainty that no one would be able to stand in his way. Lux, who had just finished sparring with Hannah, Fox Lady, and Cleo, Saintess of Agartha, was wiping away his sweat with a towel when the oracle of the divine army, Maeve, entered the training room with an anxious look on her face. "Master, I had a vision," Maeve said. "The abyssal invasion will start 7 days from now." Lux looked at the oracle with a solemn look on his face before asking her to tell him everything about the vision that she saw. "A week from now, just before sunset, countless abyssal gates will open in Elysium and Solais," Maeve said while trying her best to prevent her voice from cracking. "It is a full-blown invasion, and blood will spill and flow like rivers." Maeve's hands were trembling, which showed just how much she was affected by her vision. "Did you see anything else?" Lux inquired. "Like the outcome of the war?" "And no, but I saw Master in my vision." Maeve's lips trembled as she looked at the half-elf with moist eyes. "Master, you cease to exist." An hour after Maeve shared her vision with Lux, the half-elf held an emergency meeting inside his guild headquarters. He had made sure to call Aina, Aurelia, Hearswith, and Lady Augustina to join the meeting. The half-elf had asked Maeve to keep the part about him ceasing to exist to herself because Lux didn't want to make anyone feel anxious about this information. When everyone was gathered, Lux once again asked the oracle to tell everyone the vision that she saw. After repeating what she had said to Lux, the faces of everyone inside the room turned grim. If it was an ordinary person who said these words, people would definitely treat it as fake news. However, this news came from the oracle, who was once part of the divine army, which gave her words some credibility. "You have heard what Maeve has to say," Lux stated. "Make sure to inform everyone about it. I will also do my best to warn the rest of the world about the upcoming invasion. So, please do your best to prepare for the upcoming battle." Lady Augustina looked at the half-elf with a calm expression on her face. "Lux, where will you be when the abyssal invasion starts?" Lady Augustina asked. Right now, Lux had one of the strongest armies in the world, and wherever he would be was the safest place in the world. "I will be in Solais when the invasion starts," Lux stated. "The 6 kingdoms only have a handful of saints protecting it. I can't let them fight alone. However, I will split my forces. The floating island will stay here in the territory of the Crystal Palace. They will assist Lady Augustina in dealing with the threats that might endanger this territory." Lux owed the Crystal Palace a debt, for they had allowed them to seek asylum to their domain when the divine army was hunting them down. Although he didn't believe that the abyssal creatures would be able to overpower the dragons in this invasion, he didn't want to take any chances, especially since Aurelia was his lover. As for Karshvar Draconis, he believed that the current Dragon King was strong enough to defend his domain. Aiko, Avery, and Captain Jack Spawow, who were also in the meeting, were paying close attention to whatever Lux was saying. After answering Lady Augustina, the half-elf glanced at Aina with a serious expression on his face. If possible, he wanted her and her family to stay inside his guild headquarters to keep them safe. However, he knew that she would reject this offer. Currently, the Xeno Empire was consolidating their power, and if they abandoned their people during this crucial time, they would lose their respect and loyalty. This was very fatal for any king or emperor because the moment their subjects lost faith in them, their rule would not last for a long time. "I will send Asmodeus to help defend the Xeno Empire alongside 10 calamity-ranked monsters," Lux stated. "I will also add the King of Exile and his subordinates as your personal protectors. However, if these forces are to be annihilated, you and your family must teleport to my guild headquarters immediately. Do I make myself clear?" Aina nodded her head in understanding. She was beyond thankful that Lux had decided to send forces to help protect their empire from the abyssal invasion, proving how important she was in his heart. The half-elf then shifted his attention to Princess Anastasia, Lillian, Commander Thoram, Stronghold of Noria, Keelan, Guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild, and Nevriel, whom he had asked to come to their guild headquarters as soon as possible. Lillian, I will send 10 calamity-ranked monsters to help you defend Leaf Town, Lux stated. I will also send an additional 20 calamity-ranked monsters to help defend the kingdom of Guelevin. I would like to send more, but frankly, my forces will be stretched too thin if I do that. I hope you understand that this is the best that I can do at the moment. Princess Anastasia, Lillian, Commander Thoram, Keelan, and Nevriel all nodded their heads in understanding. The dwarf princess was feeling very anxious, but she felt a lot better when Lux stated that he would send them calamity-ranked monsters to help defend their kingdom. Cleo and Shaun, I don't know if any abyssal gates will appear in Agartha since it is located at the core of this world. But just in case, I will send 20 calamity-ranked monsters to help defend it. Make sure to inform Aurora's father about the invasion and make proper arrangements for the monsters that will help protect your kingdom. The two saints of Agartha nodded their heads to acknowledge Lux's words. Aurora, who was also in the meeting room, had a very anxious look on her face because she was worried about her family. Even so, she hoped that the kingdom of Agartha would not be invaded by the abyssal creatures who had failed to enter their domain when they first invaded Elysium. The half-elf then looked at Aiko, Avery, and Captain Jack Spawow. He had some reservations about his baby slime, but he believed that she had already grown strong enough to protect herself and those who believed in her. Aiko, as much as I want the two of us to fight together, it is best if we fight separately this time, Lux stated. The baby slime was surprised after hearing her papa's words because she thought that she would be fighting with him during the abyssal invasion. Her eyes moistened up because she thought that her papa didn't want to be with her, but Lux's next words made her realize that not only did she care about her, but he believed in her as well. Aiko, I love you, and I believe in you, Lux said after seeing the teary-eyed baby slime. Because of this, I will need your help to protect the Ford Federation and the Finn Kingdom. Pa. Aiko looked at her papa with a confused look on her face. You are now the leader of the Ford Federation, and people believe in you as well, Lux smiled. I heard from Blackfire that the Boom Boom Church is now one of the biggest religions in the Seven Seas. Is that true? Pa. Aiko replied, somewhat feeling proud that she was now a symbol of authority in the Seven Seas. Lux nodded. Good. Then, I ask you to order your pirate crew to help protect it. The Saints and Supremes that belong to the Ford Federation will help defend that domain. I will also give them an additional 10 calamity-ranked beasts to reinforce their defenses. As for you, I will need you, Avery, and Poseidon to help defend the Finn Kingdom. It is where our people will migrate to in the future, and we must protect it at all cost. Also, it is your grandpa's and grandma's kingdom, so you should protect it to the best of your abilities. I will also send 20 calamity-ranked monsters to help you defend it. Make sure to keep it safe. Aiko nodded with a determined look on her face. Pa. Lux smiled. Good girl. Truth be told, the main reason why he didn't want to let Aiko fight with him was due to Maeve's vision. He didn't understand what the Oracle meant when she said that he ceased to exist, but if that were to really become a reality, he didn't want the baby slime to suffer the same fate as him. After dividing his forces, the half-elf still had a little over 50 calamity-ranked monsters that he could summon to fight for him. Although he had hundreds of saints whom Blackfire had captured during his rampage in Elysium, he intended to let them return to their respective kingdoms in order to help defend their land in the upcoming invasion. Although this would greatly reduce the number of powerhouses he could summon, he was doing this for the bigger picture. The Beast King, who was also in the meeting, was tasked to protect his people from the upcoming invasion. Lux didn't have enough forces to spare him additional reinforcements, but Dylan was already grateful that he was allowed to fight for his homeland. Hearswith would help defend Sporfrieden, where the World Tree was located. This was one of the priority targets of the abyssal creatures, and having his master holding the fort would give Lux some peace of mind. The Blackrock clan, the Dryads, as well as the other representatives of the Wanted Kingdom, were also part of the meeting and had been informed of the upcoming invasion. All of them planned to gather at the ancient city, which was located at the center of their kingdom, creating a united front. Although Lux wanted to send some calamity-ranked monsters to reinforce them, he refrained from doing so. Right now, his forces were stretched too thin, and he knew that he couldn't afford to decrease his personal army even further. The only saving grace was that the Blackrock clan and the Dryads were all part of Heaven's Gate. In the worst-case scenario, all of them could just teleport to the floating island and escape annihilation as a last resort. As for the succubi and the satyrs, all of them would remain on the floating island to help defend it. The succubi were quite worried about Queen Rhiannon, who was the ruler of the 13th layer of the abyss. But after Lux assured them that Antero was there to protect her, their worries decreased drastically. If the Golem of Destruction was not able to protect Queen Rhiannon, no one would be able to protect her at all. They all knew that the primordial golem treated the succubus queen differently, so her safety was ensured. Lux also didn't believe that Queen Rhiannon would join the abyssal invasion. His gut instinct was telling him that, although they had a shaky beginning, Queen Rhiannon was now definitely on their side. When the meeting ended, Lux summoned his battle angel, Seraphina, to make a worldwide announcement. He wanted to share the news with every corner of the world. Ariel and Max cooperated, allowing her announcement to be heard in both Solais and Elysium. People of the world, I come with a message from the gods. 7 days from now, the abyssal invasion will begin. Monsters from the abyss will appear in our world, and rivers of blood will flow. This is a time when all must work hand in hand to help defend everything that we hold sacred. May fortune favor your valor in the crucible of war, turning every challenge into triumph and adversity into opportunity. For hearth and home, victory will be ours. Seraphina's divine voice spread far and wide, reaching every corner of Elysium and Solais, including the kingdom of Agartha, which was located deep beneath the lands of Elysium. After the announcement was made, a worldwide panic took place. But Lux knew that this was for the best. There was a saying that forewarned is forearmed. Even though this worldwide panic was inevitable, the moment things settled down, the rulers of their respective lands would calm down and start preparing for the upcoming battle. Ariel also took an active role in giving divine messages to the priestesses and seers of the lands of Elysium, informing them that the announcement that they all heard was real. The 6 kingdoms gathered to have an emergency in Barbados Academy after the announcement was heard. Lux was already there, alongside Alexander and Maximilian. Although the 6 kingdoms didn't want to admit it, in times of hardships, they could only rely on these people to help them overcome the danger that was about to descend upon their land. Lux only had one thing to say, and that was he couldn't protect everyone. He advised the 6 kingdoms to do the best they could to protect themselves. Of course, Lux wasn't that heartless and promised to assign 2 calamity-rank monsters to each kingdom. This was the best he could do for them. As for the rest, they could only pray that a gate would not appear near their territory. Lux had also ordered the entirety of Wildguard's stronghold to seek refuge in Barbados Academy. Maximilian had returned to the Rowan tribe's ancestral lands in order to bring his people to Barbados Academy, where the half-elf would be stationed as its protector. Aiko, Fei, Glee, and all the baby slimes in Leaf Town and in Lux's guild headquarters were stockpiling blast bombs, which Glee and Aiko would turn into tactical nukes. The Game Shin Merchant Guild had decided to bring their people to the floating island and let them stay in the town of Edia in order to prepare for the upcoming war against the forces of the Abyss. The Divine Army and Memento Mori also announced their participation in this war. This made the people of Elysium feel a bit better, knowing that 2 powerful factions who were once against each other had decided to work together for a common cause. While all this was happening, Lux was also making his own preparations for the greatest battle of his life. He didn't know whether Maeve's vision would come true or not, but he was certain of one thing. Whatever was going to happen, he would be there on the front lines of war to protect everything that he held sacred in his heart. A day after Lux asked Seraphina to make the worldwide announcement, the various kingdoms and empires in the 2 worlds, Elysium and Solais, began to move. Those who took the announcement seriously held meetings and rallied their troops. Of course, there were other rulers who didn't take the announcement seriously. However, their ministers and generals advised that, even if the message was fake, they should at least make some kind of preparation just in case the announcement was true. In the end, these rulers decided to delegate these matters to the people who took the announcement seriously, a decision that these rulers would regret in the future. Fin Kingdom. The giant bone ship, Poseidon, hovered above the capital city of the Fin Kingdom. Aiko was tasked to protect this place by her papa, and for this reason, she took it very seriously. She already told the pirates in the Ford Federation about the upcoming abyssal invasion and also assigned the three Supremes, as well as the other saints that belonged to that region, to defend it. Princess Camellia, who was the temporary steward of the Finn Kingdom, had already assigned the generals, as well as the high-ranking nobles, to create temporary evacuation sites where the people could take shelter just in case an abyssal gate appeared in their territory. Upon hearing the news, the majority of the citizens of the Finn Kingdom decided to migrate to the capital city, where the strongest powers of the kingdom were gathered. Fortunately, the Finn Kingdom had an underground shelter beneath its capital city, which the first king of the kingdom had constructed during his reign. Although it wasn't big enough to accommodate all of the citizens of the kingdom, it still gave others a place to stay in preparation for the upcoming invasion. Karshvar Draconis. The time has finally come, the Dragon King softly muttered as he stood on the balcony of the royal palace. His hands were clasped behind his back as he looked at the capital city that had stood for thousands of years. A moment later, a sigh escaped his lips as he raised his hands. The air around him fluctuated as a ripple of power radiated from his body. "Rally to me," the Dragon King shouted. His powerful voice was carried by the wind and reached all the floating islands that belonged to his kingdom, including the islands of the outer reaches. Soon, all the floating islands started moving and slowly flew toward the capital city of Rex Lapis. In order to overcome the abyssal invasion, all of the dragons and dragonborns under his rule must unite and stand as one. He would not take this invasion lightly, and he even planned to awaken the elders of the dragonkind who had sworn to protect their race from any threats that would endanger their survival. Having finished what he needed to do, the Dragon King took a deep breath in order to regain the strength he used when he merged the floating islands together. Half a minute later, he glanced to his side, where a man, who seemed to be in his early 40s and was wearing black robes, stood with a smile on his face. "Apollyon, what are you doing here?" the Dragon King asked in a cold tone. The man standing before him was none other than the supreme leader of Memento Mori, one of the powerful organizations in the world that no one wanted to offend. "There is only one reason why I am here, Azza," Apollyon replied. "I came here for the dragon graveyard." The Dragon King, Azza, looked at the man in front of him with a calm expression on his face. If these were normal times, he would have already attacked the man before him due to the absurdity of his words. But the current time was nowhere near normal. The previous Dragon King had left a dying will. He decreed that if the abyss were to once again descend into the world, the reigning Dragon King must surrender the floating island, where the graveyard of the dragons was located, to the current leader of Memento Mori. The number of powerhouses in Elysium had long degraded after the First Abyssal War. In order to compensate for the disparity in numbers, the dead dragons must rise to protect the living. Azza clenched and unclenched his fists because the dragon graveyard was sacred to their race. It was the most protected island in Karshvar Draconis, second only to the capital city of Rex Lapis, where the Dragon King reigned. The reason why it was heavily protected was to ensure that necromancers couldn't sneak inside and desecrate the remains of the dragons, who chose it to be their last resting place. After a while, the internal battle inside his mind ended. Although he was still unwilling, he reluctantly nodded his head. "Promise me one thing," Azza said through gritted teeth. "Unless it is a last resort, do not raise the dead of the dragon kind." Apollyon sighed before nodding his head. "You have my word," Apollyon replied. The Dragon King then rose towards the sky and made a gesture for Apollyon to follow him. Azza knew that, sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Lady Augustina looked at the beautiful elf in front of her with a frown. Hearswith had personally asked for an audience with her in order to discuss the possibility of raising the dead dragons that belonged in the Crystal Palace for the upcoming war. Similar to the Dragon King, Azza, she was very reluctant to agree to this. However, she also understood that this was something that would help bolster their forces and help them repel the invaders. Also, Hearswith was no ordinary necromancer. She was a Heaven's Necromancer and Lux's Grandmaster. Since she had a connection with the half-elf, who was now Aurelia's secret lover, Lady Augustina believed that Hearswith wouldn't do anything that would harm the Crystal Palace or break ties with them. If there was one necromancer that she would allow to enter their graveyard, it would be none other than Hearswith. Very well, Lady Augustina said. But after we win, you will let them get the eternal rest that they deserve. Okay. Hearswith nodded. You have my word. The other necromancers of Memento Mori were also visiting the ancient battlefields all over the world, raising their undead armies and increasing their ranks. Out of the 7 stars of calamity, Memento Mori had only managed to gather 5 of them. Hearswith was able to find one of them, and it was now her contracted beast. After losing in tarot, Hearswith had lost one of her most powerful trump cards. Even so, the Star of Calamity that was now under her command would play its role when the abyssal monsters invaded their lands. Barbados Academy. Thousands of people had gathered in the city where Barbados Academy was located. These people knew that this was the safest place among the 6 kingdoms, so they didn't hesitate to travel far in order to gain the Academy's protection. In fact, the members of the royal families of the 6 kingdoms, with the exception of their kings and queens, had sent all of their children to Barbados Academy for protection. In the case that their kingdom fell and they perished, their royal bloodline would at least be safe behind the walls of the Academy. I wished to fight by father's side, but he wanted me to hide in this place, the barbarian prince, Amistan Mordosk, who had been part of Lux's entourage whenever they challenged the gates of the apocalypse, said with a frown. This is so depressing. His sister, Fiora Mordosk, sighed beside him and nodded her head. Father has his duties, just like we have our own. His duty is to protect our kingdom, while our duty is to stay alive. It can't be helped. They, along with their brothers and sisters, had been ordered to travel to Barbados Academy and stay there until the abyssal invasion was over. Similar to their situation, the other royal families, including the Elven royal family, were also inside the Academy grounds. Alexander had already prepared their accommodation and asked Alicia to tell their guests about the house rules so that there wouldn't be any quarrels in the future. Enlil Neophion, the 6th Elven prince of the Elswith kingdom, was also feeling restless. However, just like his brothers and sisters, the only thing he could do was behave until the battle was over. He hoped beyond hope that the abyssal gates would not appear in their kingdom, allowing the Elven race to survive this calamity. Just as everyone was feeling anxious and restless, they saw a familiar face walking through the Academy grounds. It was none other than Lux, who had made a name for himself in both Solais and Elysium. They had initially known him as Iris' stepbrother, and only came to know more about him during the tournament in Barbados Academy. The half-elf had come a long way and had surpassed them in strength, power, and influence. He was their beacon of hope. Although he was just a high ranker, weaker than Alexander and Maximilian, the forces under his command far surpassed the power of the 2 saints combined, making him the strongest person in the 6 kingdoms. The princes of the 6 kingdoms envied him. The princesses adored him. Some of these ladies even took the initiative to approach him, including the proud princesses of the elves. They, who looked down on half-elves whom they believed as a stain to their race, were doing their best to gain his recognition and affection. Lux, for his part, politely rejected their advances, telling them that he already had many fiancées and was no longer looking for more. Even so, these proud princesses, who believed that they were more qualified than Iris to become his lover, didn't give up. However, they understood that they also couldn't force themselves on him because they still had their pride as members of the royal family. In the end, they backed away and gave him some space. They would wait until the war was over before they tried again to court him and allow their respective kingdoms to gain a backer that could move unhindered in both Elysium and Solais. Someone sure is popular, Kai, who was in her boar form, said as she stood beside the half-elf. Those snotty elven princesses were practically sticking their breasts to your body. Did it feel good? Your breasts feel better, Lux replied in a volume that only Kai was able to hear. It's so hard to tease you when you're speaking the truth, Kai said with a smug expression on her face. Are you worried about the upcoming war? A bit, Lux replied. How about you? Just a bit as well, Kai answered. Lux, can you see spirits? Only the spirits of the dead, Lux replied. Why? Kai didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at her fiancé, who had countless orbs of different colors sticking to his body. In her eyes, Lux looked like a moving snowman because every part of his body, including his clothes, had several spirits clinging onto them. These were all spirits of the various elements, and they had all gathered around Lux as if they were all seeking his protection from the things that might bring them harm. Because, if you could see them right now, you might feel troubled, Kai chuckled. The boar didn't care to explain what she was seeing, making the half-elf arch his eyebrow. A moment later, Lux asked Kai a question that was nagging in his mind. Kai, if I were to die, what would you do? Lux asked. Nothing, Kai replied. Nothing? Why? Because you're not going to die, duh. The boar then used her tusk to poke Lux's body, making the latter take a few steps back in order to evade her poking. I'm just talking about the if scenario, Lux stated. What would you do if that happened? It's not going to happen, so I don't need to think about it, Kai answered in a firm tone. Also, stop talking nonsense. If you say one more word about dying, I'll go to Iris right now and tell her that neither of us will be sleeping with you for a week. Let's see if you can endure until then. The half-elf could only smile bitterly after hearing Kai's threat. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. Hey, Kai, Lux said as he cupped the boar's face and looked at her with a solemn expression on his face. You want to have a baby with me? This time, I'll make it a reality. The boar blinked once then twice as she looked at her lover, who was looking at her with a serious gaze. I don't want to, Kai replied. You promised me that you would give me your baby after 2 to 3 years, so we will stick to that condition. You better not kick the bucket before then. You hear me? I'm too young to be a widow. Lux sighed before reluctantly releasing Kai's head from his grasp. Very well, Lux replied. You better prepare yourself because when the promised time comes, I'll make sure that you will conceive my child. I look forward to that day as well. Kai nodded. But Lux, why are you talking like this? Is there something on your mind? Lux shook his head. No, I'm just being stupid. Don't mind me, Kai. Let's sleep together tonight with Iris. Okay. Kai nodded. Make sure to rest early later, and don't keep us waiting. After saying those words, the boar walked away from him in search of Iris. The half-elf watched her back until she entered the academy, disappearing from his view. Left with nothing to do, he flew above the academy to check the surroundings. Everyone was doing something to prepare for the upcoming war, which was a good thing. As he scanned his surroundings, he found a pink-haired lady sitting on top of the clock tower of the academy. Having sensed his gaze upon her, Aurora waved at Lux and motioned for him to come to her side. Lux felt something tug at his heartstrings upon seeing the young lady who had followed him from Agartha. I guess it's about time we take that last step, Lux thought as he flew toward Aurora. Deep inside his heart, he didn't want to believe Maeve's words. However, he couldn't dismiss it either. This was why he had been feeling restless since a day ago, and his heart had still not calmed down since then. If what the Oracle saw really came to pass, Lux would definitely leave behind the people that he held dear in his heart. So, in order to not have any regrets, he intended to spend as much time as possible with them. Before the world came to an end. This place is beautiful, Aurora said softly as she looked at the field of flowers that surrounded a lake. An hour before sunset, Lux had brought her to this place in order to spend some time with her, as well as to help him temporarily forget the Oracle's cryptic words. Lux accidentally found this place while he was flying between Barbados Academy and Wildguard Stronghold, and it reminded him of the dream that he had a few days ago. In that dream, he, Aina, and Aurora were looking at 2 little girls, whom the half-elf believed to be his daughters. Although this wasn't the exact place that he saw in his dream, it was still a beautiful place, and the moon reflected on the lake's surface made it even more enchanting. Soon, the sound of violin and lyre reached Aurora's ears. The 2 little skeletons, Zeke and Zane, were playing the instruments as Lux walked toward Aurora and bowed to her. My lady, would you honor me with this dance? Lux asked. Aurora smiled before doing a curtsy. It will be my pleasure. Lux then placed his right hand on Aurora's waist and held her hand with his left. The two then started to dance, following the rhythm of the music. Small particles of lights flew several meters away from them, illuminating their surroundings. While this was happening, Diablo was lighting the candles on top of the table, while Revan arranged the plates and the cutlery. Lux had snuck into the kitchen of Barbados Academy in order to prepare this simple yet romantic candlelight dinner for two. He didn't want to have any regrets in life, so he decided to make this night special for Aurora and him. With the moon and stars as their audience, the two continued to dance until Zane and Zeke played the third song. The moment it ended, the two stared at each other for a few seconds before Lux lowered his head to kiss Aurora's lips. He kissed her 3 times, each kiss lasting for a few seconds, and the half-elf pulled back. A faint blush appeared on Aurora's cheeks because she found Lux's gentleness and sweetness very endearing. The half-elf then guided Aurora toward the table, which she didn't notice right away. Standing beside the table were Diablo and Revan. Both were ready to assist them in any way that they could. The dishes were already laid out, so all they needed to do was eat. There was also a bottle of wine being chilled at the side, ready to be consumed anytime. When Lux asked her to come with him, she didn't expect that he would do something like this, making her heart feel warm and fluffy inside. The two ate and chatted in a lively manner, while Zane and Zeke continued to serenade both of them from the side. Sensing that it was time, Diablo uncorked the bottle of wine and poured the two of them a glass each. He then moved to the side and stood in silence, watching his master enjoy this romantic moment with his lover. As Lux's firstborn, Diablo could feel the anxiety that Lux was trying to bury in his heart. He might not have the power to see the future, but there was one thing he was certain of. Anyone who wished to harm his master must get past him first. Lux's undead legion shared this sentiment. "Don't drink too much, Aurora," Lux said in concern because the pink-haired beauty had already drank 5 glasses of wine, and he didn't know if his lover had high tolerance to it or not. Lux himself only drank 2 of them, and although he wasn't tipsy, his face had a slight tinge of red in it. "MMM," Aurora hummed as she placed the empty glass on top of the table. Unlike Lux, her face was flushed, and under the candlelight, it made her look more seductive than usual. "Don't worry, I'm not drunk." Hic. The corner of Lux's lips twitched after hearing the young lady's hiccup. He then glanced at Diablo and Revan and told them to no longer give Aurora wine, which made the latter pout. "Jay, just one more, okay?" Aurora pleaded as she tried to reach the bottle of wine on the table, which Diablo hurriedly took away from her reach. "No," Lux replied. "You already have enough." "Boo." Lux could only shake his head helplessly, seeing that his lover's inhibition had been loosened by the wine. He helped Aurora stand up and supported her body before walking toward the lake, hand in hand with her. When they were several meters away from the lake, Lux summoned a couch, into which he helped his drunk lover sit, and allowed her to rest her head on his shoulder. Diablo, Revan, Zane, and Zeke cleaned up the table before disappearing from sight. They had already played their part, and it was now time to leave their masters alone, allowing the two to create a memorable night together. The reflection of the moon on the lake was beautiful, but the two weren't paying any attention to it. Perhaps emboldened by the wine she drank, Aurora took the initiative to kiss Lux. Her kisses started with small pecks, gradually turning into passionate kisses that made both of their bodies heat up. Aurora might not know a lot of things, but she understood why Lux had prepared this romantic setting for her. Feeling his love and affection, the young lady who had once been cast away by her own father into the pantheon of exile was now starting to open her heart once again. Lux's sensual touch ignited the sleeping desire that lay dormant within Aurora's body. As someone who had succubus blood running through her veins, the beautiful young lady was able to see the many forms of love that the half-elf had for the ladies, who held a special place in his heart. Aurora had seen them all, experienced them all, and she loved them all. Perhaps, among Lux's lovers, she was the only one who fully understood the half-elf's feelings toward them. And now, her time had finally come. Just like her sisters, who had given their heart and body to him, she was finally ready to take that final step and claim her rightful place in his heart. Disclaimer. Wink wink. Lux felt as if his breath was taken away the moment he saw Aurora's naked body illuminated by the moonlight. Her pink eyes glowed faintly with power as her succubus blood stirred within her heart. Currently, she was straddling Lux, and her passionate gaze, devoid of shyness, made him subconsciously swallow his saliva due to how sensual she looked. Without saying a word, Aurora cupped his face and kissed him passionately before pulling back. She then wrapped her hands at the back of his head, pulling him to her chest. He didn't resist her and opened his lips to suckle her right breast, while his left hand groped and kneaded the other. She had seen and felt this sensation many times when she was peeking at the half-elf's lovemaking with his other lovers. But having the same thing done to her felt completely different. Aurora didn't know that it was her succubus blood that made her body very sensitive, amplifying the euphoria that was washing over her body. She felt this more strongly when Lux rested his hand on her hips and lowered them slowly. Instead of pain, a sigh of pleasure escaped her seductive lips. Two small horns grew out of the top of her head, and a tail with a spade-like tip appeared behind her. The moment she lost her maidenhood, her succubus power awakened in full, making Lux blank out for a few seconds as his member moved deeper inside of her. Perhaps, knowing that her lover had fallen into a daze, she bit his neck like a vampire but didn't draw any blood. The pain broke Lux out of his trance, and it resulted in him feeling extreme pleasure that surpassed even the succubus queen's sexual prowess. Lux had no idea that, the moment a succubus offered her chastity to a man, that person would be marked by her, raising his sensitivity to the very limits. Simply put, a single touch was enough to put an ordinary person to the peak of pleasure, making him lose control over his body. As if teasing her lover, Aurora shook her hips lightly. But that was more than enough for Lux to lose control of his senses, making him release his seed and marking her as his woman. The release was so powerful that it was also painful. It was as if Aurora had sucked up everything he had to offer, with the exception of his soul. Despite the fact that his member was buried deep inside her, his essence, mixed with the blood of her innocence, overflowed and stained her thighs, making Aurora sigh in happiness and satisfaction. Lux couldn't believe that he had already come without even doing anything. Even now, he felt as if Aurora had milked him to the last drop, leaving nothing behind. "Don't worry," Aurora said softly as she cupped her lover's face. "You will regain your strength soon, I promise." After saying those words, she lightly bit her tongue, drawing blood. She then kissed his lips, her tongue entering his mouth. The half-elf tasted blood, and with it, a warm sensation spread inside his body. He felt rejuvenated, and his member, which was about to go limp after releasing everything it had inside of Aurora, hardened like a rock. "Try to last longer this time, okay?" Aurora said in a teasing tone after she pulled back from the kiss. "Don't worry. We will continue until you are able to match me." Lux held Aurora's gaze as the fire of determination burned in his eyes. He had to admit that he didn't expect this turn of events, but he didn't feel too bad about it either. This was his first time with Aurora, and he wanted both of them to enjoy it to the fullest. Since his lover wanted him to make her feel good, he would comply and give her a night that she would never forget in her life. A minute later, Aurora's sweet sighs reverberated in the quiet night. Beneath the moonlight and the starry skies, two hearts intertwined, staring at each other with loving eyes. A promise was whispered, soft and clever, vowing eternal love, lasting forever. The half-elf looked at Aurora's sleeping face with a gentle gaze. He had just woken up a minute ago, and the first thing he saw was his lover, sleeping peacefully beside him. Both of them laid in the field of flowers, with only a blanket covering their naked bodies. The sun had peeked over the horizon, casting its first rays of lights upon the world. Looking at his beloved, Lux wondered if this was what Adam had felt when he woke up beside Eve in the Garden of Eden. Not wanting to wake her up, he simply held her close, feeling her skin touch his own. Aurora's body was warm, and hugging her felt very good. Due to the blanket that was covering her body, Lux was unable to see the marks that he had left on her seductive body during their lovemaking. Making love to her can be very dangerous, Lux thought as he remembered what had transpired a few hours ago. More dangerous than doing it with the succubus queen. Lux had his doubts about Aurora's striking resemblance to Queen Rhiannon, who was currently in the 13th level of the Abyss. But after seeing the two small horns that were still on her head and the tail that he was touching right now, he had confirmed his suspicion that the two of them might be related to each other. The half-elf was lost in his thoughts as he fiddled with the spade-like tip of Aurora's tail, so he didn't notice that the young lady's eyes started to flutter. A few seconds later, Aurora opened her eyes and looked at the half-elf, who had just realized that the young beauty was already awake. "It tickles," Aurora said softly. "Don't bully my tail." "I'm not bullying it," Lux replied as he moved the spade-like tip towards his lips and kissed it. "See?" "MMM." Aurora snuggled closer to him, burying her head into his chest. Seeing that his lover wanted to be hugged, he reluctantly released her tail and wrapped her in a loving embrace. "You were amazing last night," Lux said softly. "Maybe I should get you drunk more often." "Occasionally is good," Aurora replied. "But you should have removed the everlasting ring last night." "You know I can't do that." Lux planted a kiss on her forehead. "At least not yet." Aurora rubbed the half-elf's chest lovingly before raising her head to look at him. "Now that you are sated and more relaxed, it is time to tell me what has been bothering you," Aurora said. "I sensed your restlessness since yesterday, and I want to know what is making you feel that way." Lux didn't expect that Aurora would be able to sense his anxiety. He thought that he had managed to hide it from his lovers, but it seemed that he had underestimated how strong the half-succubus perception was. "I can tell you, but promise me one thing," Lux stated with a solemn expression on his face. "You will not tell anyone else, okay?" "Okay." Aurora nodded. "I promise." The half-elf took a deep breath before telling Aurora about Maeve's vision. Her expression, which was as calm as a lake earlier, remained as it was until Lux finished telling her everything. In the end, Aurora didn't say anything after her lover's explanation had ended. She simply held Lux tightly, as if she was afraid that he would vanish without a trace. Days passed swiftly as everyone prepared for the promised date. Lux was able to step on the ranks of an S-ranker after gathering an extreme amount of beast cores from Barbados Academy, Finn Kingdom, Aspor Frieden, the Crystal Palace, and the Necromancer's ancestral lands. Something like this had never happened in the past, and it was truly unprecedented. A half-elf, who was only about 18 years old, had accomplished multiple feats that no ordinary person could pull off. All of his named creatures and members of his covenant had also increased their ranks, for they shared his attributes and grew with him as he became stronger. With the exception of Avernus, Diablo, and the others had now all become Empyrean-ranked alpha monsters. He had done everything within his power, and now he stood on the ramparts of Barbados Academy, looking at the setting sun with a calm expression on his face. Keen and Gerhardt stood beside him. They had trained hard for this day, and even the green-haired half-elf had temporarily set aside his quarrel with the Elven Kingdom and chose to fight by Lux's side in this battle that would descend upon Elysium and Solais. Alexander, Vera, Maximilian, Keen's master, and two old men stood side by side. These two old men were the two reclusive saints of the Six Kingdoms, with the oldest of them being the founder of Barbados Academy. Keen's master, whom people simply referred to as Void or the Void, was a pseudo-saint. Although he still hadn't stepped onto the saint rank, his techniques and fighting prowess were equivalent to one. To think that a day would come when we would have to rely on the children to help us overcome a calamity, the oldest saint in the group said with a sigh. The times have changed. The other saints could only nod their heads in agreement with his words. The six of them were the strongest people within the Six Kingdoms, and yet, the one whom they were depending on was a half-elf who was only about to turn 18. They found this quite humbling, but they were very glad that Lux chose to stay in Solais to help defend the Six Kingdoms from a possible invasion. Aside from the soldiers and other fighters, everyone was evacuated to the underground shelters that had been expanded under Barbados Academy. Iris, Kai, and Aurora were also in the shelter, and they would serve as the last line of defense in case things went south. If an abyssal gate were to appear within the Six Kingdoms, Lux, Keen, Gerhardt, Alexander, and Maximilian would move forward and kill as many abyssal creatures as they could. Vera, the barbarian saint, as well as the old man who was the founder of Barbados Academy, would stay to defend the fort and ensure that the people would be safe from harm. Maeve and Hannah stood behind Lux as they gazed at the sun that was slowly sinking beneath the horizon. Just as the last rays of light were about to disappear, they felt it. A powerful fluctuation rippled near the barbarian territory, which meant that an abyssal gate was spawning in that direction. Without another word, Lux summoned Avernus. He and the rest of the vanguard jumped on the Draculica's back as they headed toward the abyssal gate in haste. Hyperdrive, Hannah shouted as she opened a spatial gate that would allow Avernus to travel at great speed and reach the location where the abyssal gate had spawned. Hannah had prepared several anchors within the Six Kingdoms, allowing her to instantly teleport anyone who was part of their group with ease. As soon as they arrived, they saw a 50-meter-tall purple portal that emitted an otherworldly presence. Without any hesitation, Lux summoned his undead legion, his covenant, as well as all the calamity-ranked beasts that were currently with him. After splitting his forces to help his allies, Lux only had a little more than 60 calamity-ranked monsters under his command. Each of them was emitting a powerful aura that boosted the morale of their group. Aside from them, there was one more monster that stood at the forefront of Lux's calamity-ranked monsters. This monster was a demigod monster that Lux had created using the body of Andrus, who once tried to invade the 13th layer of the Abyss with the intention of making Queen Rhiannon his woman. After using the Undead Generator skill, a unique monster was created. It was a Strigoi, one of the most bloodthirsty undead in existence, and their sole purpose was to kill everything that stood in their way. Strigois were vampires, but the one that Lux created was more similar to a werewolf. Even so, it didn't matter. What he needed was a killing machine, and he got what he wanted. A demigod, who was not only deadly and fast but also became stronger the more it drank the blood of its victims, increasing its vitality. Thousands of undead monsters rose from the ground as the half-elf planted a dozen tombstones that spawned an infinite number of elder zombies and mummies as long as they remained erected. As if waiting for that cue, countless abyssal demons and monsters emerged from the portal en masse. These demons thought that after crossing over to the other side of the abyss, they would be able to lay waste on the helpless people who wouldn't be prepared for their invasion. Unfortunately for them, not only was everyone aware of their plans, but they had also made adequate preparations in order to thwart them. Kill, Lux ordered, and, immediately, the Lich Revenants and the Skeleton Night Stalkers unleashed a deadly volley of death upon the enemies, instantly killing the weaker abyssal monsters. A chaotic riot unfolded, but everyone knew that this was just the beginning of the true battle that was about to unfold. Elysium, the Dragon King, Azza, unleashed his dragon breath, decimating all the monsters that were crossing over from the portal. These pitiful monsters turned into ashes before they could even do anything. Everyone, give them hell, Azza ordered. Behind him, countless dragons unleashed their dragon breath towards the portal with the intention of destroying it. However, they all knew that this was impossible. But they did this for a reason. The Abyssal Gate wasn't a one-way thing. Just like the creatures that were able to cross over to their world, the denizens of Elysium and Solais could cross over to their side as well, bringing the battle into the abyss. However, they didn't do that. Instead, they intended to annihilate anything that was behind the purple portal about to intrude upon their world. While the dragons were able to gain the upper hand in their battlefield, some places weren't that lucky. In the northwestern region of Elysium, Nyarlathotep was having the time of his life. After crossing through the portal, he found himself in the kingdom of halflings, who didn't make enough preparations for the upcoming war. This was one of the kingdoms who had snubbed Seraphina's worldwide announcement, refusing to believe her warnings. Because of this, their capital city easily fell because their defenders were not concentrated in one place. But even if they had prepared, even if they had heeded Seraphina's warnings, the possibility of them winning against the outer god, Nyarlathotep, was slim. Ha ha ha. The outer god laughed as he used his power to manipulate all the people in the city, turning them all into crazed mortals whose madness knew no bounds. He made them all fight against and kill each other. Fathers killing their children. Wives killing their husbands. It was a maddening scene, and Nyarlathotep's crazed laughter drowned out the cries of the halflings whom he forced to witness the destruction that he orchestrated. More, Nyarlathotep shouted. Suffer more. Sacrifice yourselves in my name. The outer god's madness was infectious, turning all the abyssal creatures that had accompanied him to Elysium into sadistic monsters who wanted nothing more than to see destruction reign supreme. The black-robed man watched as the countless abyssal creatures in front of him entered the purple portal in great numbers. There were some spells and elemental arrows that managed to pass over to their side, making the man smile. So they are trying to resist, the black-robed man thought. But it doesn't matter. They will not be able to stop the inevitable. Currently, only the small fries were going through the purple portal. Rank 4 up to Deimos-ranked monsters were the only ones passing through the gates because this was what he had ordered everyone to do. He wanted to give people despair by slowly increasing the might of the creatures passing over to Solais, making them all lose hope. The black-robed man hated Solais with a vengeance. He had been chosen by the gods to save the world, but after deciding to ascend to godhood in order to gain the power to change its fate, its denizens rebelled against him. Even the goddess, who had personally picked him from the masses, sacrificed her life in order to stop his ascension. Although the ritual had failed, the champion had still turned into a pseudo-god, which was a level higher than a demigod. The only problem was that he could only remain in the abyss because the goddess had imbued his body with a powerful law that prevented him from crossing over to Elysium and Solais. Because of this, he decided to send the abyssal horde to Solais and Elysium as his way of enacting his vengeance. As the minutes passed, more and more abyssal monsters entered the portal. But as if his patience had run thin, one of the demigod nobles roared as he jumped toward the portal with the intention of killing anyone who was waiting for him on the other side. A frown appeared on the black-robed man's face, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Seeing his reaction, some of the demigods, who were also waiting for their turn, glanced at each other. Since Briars had entered the portal, I guess we will not get a chance to kill anyone, one of the demigods said. Let him do what he wants. Another demigod shrugged. It's not like we won't have our turn. The world of Solais is big, and he will not be able to annihilate every living creature there in a day. The other demigods nodded their heads in agreement. Because of this, all of them decided to wait until the small fries had all passed through the portal before they, too, stepped into the world of Solais, whom their new master wished to destroy at all costs. 6 kingdoms in Solais. Haha, hear me, mortals. I am Briars, and I will be your doom. The 4-meter-tall demigod, who looked like a blue minotaur, shouted. Blue flames were circling around his body, making him look more threatening than he already was. A glance was enough to tell him that the place where he appeared had some decent defenders who were able to hold back the vanguard of their invasion. But, just as he was about to join the fray, something fast, almost resembling a blur, pounced on him. Before he could even do anything, Briars found himself being sent flying by a blow that could have easily killed anyone below the demigod rank. Everything happened so fast that the blue minotaur didn't even know what hit him. Damn! Briars cursed internally as his body crashed to the ground. Even so, it didn't take long before he stood up and faced whatever creature dared to sneak attack him. What are you? Briars narrowed his gaze as he looked at the werewolf-like creature, whose entire body was as black as the night. The Strygoi's blood-red eyes locked itself on its opponent's body as his razor-sharp fangs, which was dyed with the blood of the foes it had vanquished, extended. Just a mindless beast. Briars snorted as he summoned his great axe. Come. But, just as he was preparing to fight against the Strygoi in front of him, Avernus descended from the sky and unleashed a dragon breath toward the demigod. Briars clicked his tongue before dodging the attack that came from the sky. He didn't become a demigod by playing it safe, and he'd had his fair share of battles. The rulers of the abyss were battle-hardened warriors. All of them were strong. A weak leader would not be able to hold their position for long, especially in the abyss, where each abyssal lord was out for the other's throats. Although Briars had successfully dodged Avernus' attack, The Strigoi had used this opportunity to unleash a barrage of attacks that pushed the blue minotaur back. Wounds started to appear on his body as he tried to dodge, block, and deflect the Strigoi's quick attacks, which were aiming to deal as much damage as possible. The battle raged around them, and each of their strikes resulted in many shockwaves, decimating any creature that dared to come near their battlefield. While this was happening, Lux commanded his forces and continued to decimate the Abyssal army. Alexander, Maximilian, Keen, and Gerhardt had also joined the fray, killing as many monsters as they could and staying away from the battle of the two demigods who could easily turn them into meat paste if they weren't careful. Avernus and the Strigoi were ganging up on their enemy, but Briar's wasn't an easy opponent to defeat. Lux knew that the demigod wouldn't be the first or the last powerhouse that would enter Solais from the gate, which made him frown. Taking a deep breath, Lux took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the purple portal. His movement caught the attention of Avernus, Alexander, Maximilian, Keen, and Gerhardt. They understood what Lux was trying to do, so they decided to believe in him. The half-elf knew that he couldn't remain passive because it would only worsen their situation in the long run. Because of this, he decided to take the chance and bring the battle to their enemy's home turf. The half-elf didn't know what awaited him on the other side, but he wasn't too worried. In each of his hands was a blast bomb. They looked like the ordinary blast bombs that Eiko usually tossed at her enemies. However, the ones in Lux's possession were no ordinary blast bombs. They were nuclear-level blast bombs, and with them, he planned to decimate everything and anything that was waiting for him on the other side of the abyssal portal.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.